Super Hijinx, Season 2, Episode 2, Frankenfish. Written and narrated for you by Raven Marie Morris. Sunrise was dead. The goldfish floated belly up in the aquarium. How could this have happened? Sunrise was fine that morning. Jerathan glanced at the kitchen clock with wild eyes. Less than 2 hours remained before the Ansellans were due back from their weekend trip. What was he going to do? Jerathan jumped when his phone rang. An incoming call from Jennifer.
Jerathan? Hey, this is Jennifer.
Oh, hi, Jennifer.
Hiya! So, we're gonna be home pretty soon.
Jerathan could hear driving in the background.
How did everything go this weekend?
Jerathan eyed the dead fish floating in the aquarium.
Great! Awesome! Did you get to give Sunrise his second feeding yet? No biggie if you didn't. We're almost home anyways.
Tiny orange pellets floated listlessly around Sunrise's corpse, uneaten. Jerathan had counted the fish food out with care and sprinkled them in before realizing the poor creature was dead. He bit his lip. Tears sprang to his eyes. Yep, Sunrise got his second feeding today.
Aw, thanks, Jerathan. You're the best pet sitter.
More car noise.
How is Sunrise, by the way?
Jerathan grabbed a fistful of his curls with one hand and sank onto the couch. How is he? Why do you ask?
Why?
Confusion entered Jennifer's voice.
No reason, I guess. Only that he was acting a little slow before we left. But he's good?
Yes, of course. Sunrise is fine. Completely fine. Not dead or anything at all. Jerathan winced at the lies. Jennifer was silent for a moment, but his superpower must have worked because she sighed in relief.
I'm so glad to hear that. I was a tad worried about him, to be honest. Thanks.
Sure thing, no problem. Jerathan hung up before he could lie about anything else. He buried his face in his hands. Why did he say that Sunrise was fine? Why didn't he just tell Jennifer the truth? The answer was simple. This was his first pet-sitting job. If he wanted a pet of his own, namely a dog, he had to prove to his parents that he was capable of caring for a living animal. If they learned that Sunrise had died on his watch, he could forget about ever getting a dog. Jerathan lifted his head, catching his reflection in a mirror propped on a table across the room. His curls were streaked with gold. He was going to have to hide that. But first, he needed to deal with Sunrise. Jerathan found a small sandwich bag in the kitchen and scooped Sunrise into it. Outside, he tossed the bag into his bike basket and donned his helmet. The Ansellans lived in a different neighborhood than the Johnsons, but close enough for Jerathan to bike back and forth for his pet-sitting job. He jumped onto his bike and pedaled to the downtown pet store. Excuse me, do you carry this type of goldfish? Jerathan stood at the pet store counter, across from an employee, Sunrise in a sandwich bag between them on the counter's surface. Jerathan visited the store often to gawk at the puppies on display, but today was different. His hopes dwindled when the employee shook her head. Afraid not. That's a rare one, a meteor goldfish. We only carry common goldfish. Jerathan mumbled his thanks and dragged himself back to where his bike was parked outside, the late afternoon sun boring down on him. If only he could bring Sunrise back to life. Jerathan's head snapped up. He knew someone who just might be able to help. Jerathan returned home and snuck into the house through the basement. He found Sylvia lying on the floor, paper and colored pencils spread out before her, a stretchy cotton headband holding back her humongous cloud of curls. Jerathan checked that the coast was clear. He stood in front of Sylvia, but she ignored him, humming as she doodled away. He fidgeted, the sandwich bag containing Sunrise hidden behind his back. Hey, Syl, I need your help with something. That got her attention. Sylvia craned her neck to look up at him, She arched an eyebrow, as suspicious as Alice.
You do? With what?
This? Jerathan held out the sandwich bag. Sylvia scrambled to her feet, her eyes alight. Jerathan took a step back, uncomfortable with her eagerness.
Whoa! A dead fish?
She bounced on her toes. Jerathan grabbed her hand. Come on. They stoppered a sink and poured the contents of the sandwich bag into it. Jerathan eyed his baby sister. Can you bring it back to life? Ever since Sylvia scared the living daylights out of Aunt Ida a couple of months ago, using her electricity to animate her paper and clay creations, she had been practicing with her drawings and toys. Jerathan hoped her superpower would work on a fish. Sylvia rolled up the sleeves of her pink and white striped sweater and got to work, her tongue poking out of the side of her mouth. Sylvia and Jerathan jumped 10 feet the first time Sunrise started twitching the moment electricity met scale. Sylvia tried again, using more electricity. Sunrise almost flopped out of the sink. Jerathan clamped a hand over Sylvia's mouth when she screamed with equal parts horror and delight. The siblings froze and listened, but the rest of the family was occupied upstairs and remained none the wiser. Jerathan checked his phone. Time was running out. No matter how hard Sylvia tried, all she could do was make Sunrise twitch for a few seconds. Jerathan ruffled her hair in thanks, which made her scowl and duck, before scooping Sunrise back into the sandwich bag and racing back to the Ansellan's house on his bike. Jerathan put Sunrise, still dead, back into his aquarium. He slipped out of the house through the back door, just as the Ansellans pulled into the driveway, glad that he had stowed his bike in the bushes at the side of the house. Guilt gnawed at him like a dog with a tasty bone as he pedaled away, but he reasoned that he had done everything he could. Everything except tell the simple truth, a voice in the back of his head scolded. 4 days passed, and it was Friday. Jerathan had been dreading going to the Supervale Community Center and running into Jennifer. He had heard nothing from her about Sunrise since she and her family returned from their trip on Monday, which made no sense, unless she thought that Sunrise had been fine in his care and perished after they returned. The day was almost over. Jerathan had managed to avoid Jennifer, which hadn't been too difficult as, even after a year and a half in the Supervale homeschool group, he was still in the pre-course because he refused to use his superpower. In that time, Sylvia had moved on to the primary course, with Alice joining Eric in the senior course. Jerathan was so caught up in his thoughts that he hardly noticed Jennifer arrive. She sat beside him on one of the couches in front of the glass walls overlooking the parking lot. Mr. Johnson was picking Jerathan up for a special outing to celebrate his first pet-sitting gig. Mrs. Johnson had already taken the rest of the kids home. Jennifer bumped Jerathan's shoulder.
Hiya!
Jerathan wanted to sink into the couch cushions. Hi.
Why are you wearing that silly hat?
Jennifer grinned with amusement at the winter cap pulled low over Jerathan's loose curls.
Kinda hot, isn't it?
It was hot. Jerathan had been wearing it since Monday, despite it being late April. Before he knew what he was doing, he reached up and removed the cap. Jennifer's eyes widened at the blonde strands visible in his hair. My hair changes color when I tell lies. Jennifer stared at him with large, liquid eyes, full of wonder. Jerathan forged on. It's my superpower, lying and making people believe whatever I want them to. Jerathan took a deep breath. I lied about Sunrise. He died sometime between me feeding him Monday morning and coming over in the afternoon. I panicked. I didn't want you to think that I neglected him. He was okay all the other times I came over. I swear. Anyway, I'm sorry. Jennifer did something Jerathan didn't expect. She slung a long, freckled arm around his neck and pulled him close, as if they were good friends, which they weren't.
Thanks for telling me, Jerathan, about Sunrise, and about your superpower. I know it wasn't easy, but I appreciate it, and I'm not mad at you. I believe you because I know you're telling the truth.
Jerathan deflated. a weight lifting off his chest. "I'll never lie about anything like that again, I promise." Jennifer shrugged.
"I don't know. I definitely think there are right times to lie. You should have told the truth about Sunrise then and there, I guess. But you have now, so it's all good. For what it's worth, I think your superpower is pretty cool. You should use it more often."
Jerathan stared at her, unsure of what to say, and feeling bad about never asking what her superpower was, despite having known her for over a year. Before he could ask, Jennifer sprang to her feet, which Jerathan was glad about because the crook of her arm around his neck was starting to get sweaty.
"Your dad's coming, but I'm glad we were able to have this heart-to-heart. See you next Friday."
Jerathan felt his face flush with a mixture of gratitude and annoyance as she loped off, but her words stuck with him, all the same. Jerathan slipped into the passenger seat of the car, his mind far away. He remembered, too late, that his winter cap was still in his hands, but when he looked into the sun visor mirror, he noticed, to his utter astonishment, that the blonde strands in his hair had disappeared. Was it because he told the truth to Jennifer? Mr. Johnson glanced at him as he backed out of the parking space. "So, I was thinking we could swing by the pet store?" Jerathan closed his eyes for a moment, relaxing into his seat. "Actually, Dad, I'd like to go home. I don't think I'm ready to go to the pet store just yet. I want to do more pet sitting before I get a pet of my own, if that's okay?" Mr. Johnson snapped his mouth closed and pushed up his glasses. "Really? I mean, of course it's okay." He reached over and patted Jerathan on the knee. "I'm proud of you, son. Your mother and I both are. You've shown so much initiative and maturity since you started pet sitting." Jerathan grinned and watched the landscape pass by, gilded in the sunset. Maybe his superpower wasn't bad, after all. Maybe, like Jennifer said, there were right times to lie. Jerathan made up his mind. From now on, he would lie for good. Thank you for listening to Super Hijinx, Season 2, Episode 2, Frankenfish.